Jonathan Head, who's close to Sirte. Now, Jonathan, set the scene for us.
Well, this is certainly the biggest attack we've seen so far. It started just after sunrise this morning. Huge numbers of fighters came in. We could tell it was going to be something much bigger than the kind of disorganized hit-and-run attempts we've seen on the town from this side, from the west. A number of tanks went up, took up positions along the side of the road I am now, about a mile further up, with rocket launchers, and started this sustained bombardment into the town, which is basically about a mile or two in that direction from me now. And at the back of the town, we could see big plumes of smoke rising where the tank shells landed. After about half an hour, the entire town was covered by a pall of black smoke. What you can hear now is the ambulances bringing the injured out, and that tells you it's quite a sustained attack. They're sending fighters in, pushing in to the southern fringes of the very centre of the town, and has been an awful lot of gunfire, really sustained machine gun fire, rocket fire. We've had quite a number of shots whizzing around us as well. It's been pretty volatile. So it looks like this is the main effort. We know on the east side, the forces from Benghazi have got very, very close to the town centre now, but have encountered snipers there. They're confident that they can get this done fairly soon, but given the extraordinary tenacity of the resistance, I would hazard a guess that the fighting could go on still over a matter of days, right inside the town centre itself.
And what about the civilians who may still be inside Sirte? I know a lot of them did choose to leave.
We saw a very large number leaving over the past 2 weeks. It varied from day to day, but it was very hard to guess how many were left behind. Some people thought that perhaps 20–30% of the population was still there. Maybe more got out. At times the roads were closed off. The situation was pretty grim for them. They've been under bombardment now for 3 weeks, but this is much worse. If there are civilians there now, and there must still be some, it's going to be pretty awful to be in that town now. And I think there will be real concerns, particularly about families that are still there, people with children, women and children, elderly relatives there. Unfortunately, I think the transitional government simply ran out of patience. They told us throughout this week that they were holding off to try and let civilians get out. But as long as Sirte was still held, they simply felt they don't fully control the country and can start the business of reconstruction. So this attack was long expected. Certainly from what we've seen, it's now on. They're not going to stop now until they've taken Sirte.
What NATO action has there been in support of the interim forces?
Not as much, I think, as we've seen in previous days. Partly, I think, because it's much harder for NATO to hit anything in the town centre. I mean, we've heard NATO aircraft overhead, certainly. They're up there. We don't have any evidence from what we've seen that they've actually launched any strikes inside the town centre. From where we are on the west, and there are two fronts, so I don't see what's happening over on the east side so much. This looks very much like a homegrown Libyan affair. And these are volunteer forces. All these people have simply learnt to fight over the months that they've been struggling in other parts of Libya. They're generally pretty chaotic, but they've certainly learnt some lessons. Their commanders are making great efforts to discipline their young fighters, not having them dashing in like heroes, but having them go in an orderly fashion and focus their fire where they're facing this very skilled resistance. I mean, the sniper fire is often very accurate, so they need to be disciplined if they're going to take Sirte without suffering significant casualties.
Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Head.
Now to Libya, where the battle for the hometown of former leader Muammar Gaddafi is underway. Revolutionary fighters have begun a major assault on Sirte to try to end a 3-week standoff. Commanders say that this is the final push to take the town from Gaddafi loyalists. Let's get the latest from the front line. Aljazeera's Zaina Khoda is there. Zaina, Gaddafi loyalists have had 3 weeks to dig in. This is going to be quite a fight.
Definitely, it will be quite a fight. Like you mentioned, it's been 3 weeks now, and commanders are telling us that today really is the final assault, and a major assault really is underway. Thousands of fighters are surrounding the besieged city of Sirte. We are now at the southern entrance of that city. Fighters are positioned in the east, the west, and the south, and they're heavily bombarding Sirte. And I've been asking them, what are you targeting? And according to them, they're targeting Gaddafi loyalists loyalist positions in areas like the Ouagadougou Conference Center, another civilian neighborhood known as Sabamihi, which means 700, and another area called District 3. They believe that is where Gaddafi loyalists are now holed up. There hasn't been much resistance in the sense that Gaddafi loyalists aren't using heavy artillery and heavy weapons to fight back, but we do hear a lot of sniper fire, and this will really be the main challenge once these fighters, their ground forces, actually push into the city. Right now what they're doing is bombarding it and trying to weaken the defenses, but once they push in, they are going to be engaged in street battles, and they're going to be facing snipers.
And what of civilians in Sirte during that 3-week lull? Have they managed to get away?
Well, thousands of civilians over the past 3 weeks managed to escape from the city. It has been difficult for some. Many of them will tell you we just didn't have enough fuel to drive our vehicles. Others say that, they were trapped and loyalists weren't allowing them to leave. But there are still civilians inside Sirte. And I have to mention that some of them do not want to leave. This is a city where Gaddafi does enjoy support. Unlike other battles we've witnessed in Libya, battles like in Zawiya and in Tripoli, when anti-Gaddafi fighters actually enter the city, there are people inside the city who rise up against the state. But here it's a whole different scenario. Gaddafi does enjoy support. Many of the civilians who have left really have expressed a lot of resentment against the anti-Gaddafi fighters, as well as NATO, blaming them for civilian deaths inside the city. But what is important, and I think we have to stress, is the fact that the hospital is not very far from here. The main hospital, Ibn Sina, and the International Committee of the Red Cross really has been warning both sides to spare the hospital, because it got a lot of indirect hits, and they believe hundreds of people are inside that hospital.
Okay, Zaina, many thanks indeed. Zaina Hodder near the front line in Sirte.